Hello everyone, my name is Muir and we've got something new for you today. However, before we get into the video, I'd like to take a moment to tell you that nearly 70% of people who watch our videos are not subscribed. If you're not subscribed, you could do me a huge favor by liking the video, commenting below, subscribing to the channel, and ringing that bell. It really helps out the channel and lets me know that you're liking what I'm making. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the video. Hello everyone, my name is Fen Plays and this is Starsector, version 0.95.1a-RC6. So, I do like aspects of Starsector, of this version. I don't like what they did to phase ships. I think they should have found a different counter to that. They seem neutered for general play, unless you really build into them. And I think I've gotten everything that I can in this version of the game. I have tons of content for the previous version, which more than likely no one will watch, which is fine. But yeah, also interest is starting to wane. So that basically means we're coming to an end on this Let's Play of Starsector version 0.95.1a-RC6. Maybe when 1B comes out, if there's substantial changes, maybe we'll check that out. But yeah, just if we were to go through the Glacier Academy, that would be like probably 40 episodes by itself. And that's just rushing through it, because that's what I did in Starsector version 0.95a, last version. And yeah, I mean, it was fun. I enjoyed it. But yeah, definitely the skills are nice. I like the skills. I like some of the ships. But I think I've gone as far as I can and really seen any major changes. Like, I've seen changes, but at the same time I haven't seen anything that makes it significantly better or worse, except for phase ships, and compared to previous version 0.95a. So we're going to go ahead and move on to other projects, and just, you know, hope you guys enjoy. If you really want to see more of Starsector, let me know in the comments below and I'll consider continuing. But until then, I'm not so certain, because as I've said, I have like more content coming for previous versions of Starsector for like until like December of 2020. So 2022. So I did a lot. I'm kind of burnt out on Starsector. But yeah, it's really fun to play like that early game portion, and at a certain point after you played the game enough, you're gonna hit the point to where the little things about the game that just are still problems, like not being able to back out of attacking a station because you accidentally pressed the button, and not being able to find items, like just comparing this to like what we can get today. Like, you could just order something on Amazon and it's there. I know that the illegal dealers are there to sort of simulate that, but it just seems like you can spend forever looking for something and not get it and not find it anywhere. So it just, I don't like it. There are things that I don't like, but they aren't big deals. They'll hopefully update those, or there's just mods that fix that. And yeah, I really hope that they do things that improve quality of life for people playing the game. As you get into like mid-game or something, things change. I don't know, they figure it out. What I'm kind of hoping that they do is, with their changes to phase ships, I'm hoping they reverse some of that and instead add like phase weaponry, weapons that can be used to target ships in phase space, something like that maybe, or like a specialized phase fighters or bombers. I don't know, they'd figure it out. Probably things they've already thought about. But alright guys, leave me a comment below. Tell me if you want me to keep going on this Let's Play. we've been doing it back to back, and I've been shooting one episode a day, approximately, so that I always have stuff for you guys. Just in case, RC7 comes out today or something, which it hasn't as of shooting. This is shot on 12/29, so to my knowledge, it hasn't come out. But yeah, just little things. I think that the idea of certain ships needing to be spec'd into for them to even be really viable is just bad design. And I'm kind of hoping they get away from that. Because as it is right now, phase ships are kind of bad unless you really specialize into them. Trying to think about things. One of the things they could do is just make phase ships more expensive. Now that doesn't really matter, but it means that in the early game, people won't be able to spam them, or something that makes them not necessarily the best. But yeah, we'll have to see what they do, because a lot of people in the forums and on Reddit have pretty much said that they don't use phase ships, period, anymore. Unless it's a Revenant or a Phantom, if it's a combat phase ship, they don't even use it. People complained that this super hyper dangerous 0.95A phase fleet that you run into, that was just pure death, the death fleet that people run into. Now that one's a cakewalk for people, which is not good, because it's supposed to be this super elite thing, and now it's just kind of a bad joke. Which is definitely not what you want. Then, the fight with the Ziggurat is evidently just a bad joke as well, because it's supposed to be this super powerful, terrifying ship that you run into that basically annihilates your fleet the first time you run into it. But now it's just it's just the joke, and that's not good. We're seeing something where, on one hand, phase ships are supposed to be super dangerous. On the other hand, phase ships are kind of now a joke. They're kind of like stormtroopers. In the lore, they're super scary and dangerous, but in the actual, show or story itself, they can't hit anything despite being expert sharpshooters and being able to shoot people miles away on a mountainside while moving, going to school both ways in the snow, uphill, both ways. So it's just one of those things where I think the developers have kind of shot themselves in the feet. So let's just speculate on how they could fix that. So how are you supposed to use phase ships now is a question. And one of my solutions was you give phase ships missiles. Afflictors, you give them missiles that have a long cooldown, like breach missiles. And then you take advantage of phase anchor, which speeds up all the reload times and flux dissipation by a huge degree. So then they come out of phase space, they dump all their missiles, they go back in the phase space, come out in record time, dump all their missiles again, go back in and come out, dump all their missiles. And they're able to do a ton of damage that way. The only problem is, that turns the Afflictor into how you would play a Gremlin. Because a Gremlin's a missile boat. You can put any amount of blasters on it, which is fine. But you need to get really close to the enemy for that. Get really close to the enemy, you're probably going to have a lot of hard flux on you. Your ship's going to move really slowly. So I don't know. They've really screwed it up in that regard. In my opinion, they've screwed it up. You might think it's different, but it's like saying, "Oh man, these are the most dangerous things ever," and they literally had to develop new sensors just to counter them. How can we attack them in phase space? Well, it's supposed to be World War II era naval warfare, right? So where are the destroyers? Why does the sub need to surface before it can be targeted by phase ships? Maybe. So let's speculate. How can we how could the developer fix that? Well, maybe there could be fighters that phase, like other high-tech fighters, and their whole thing is that they can fight in phase space, which you normally can't do. And opening up being able to fight in P space would make P space basically the area where phase ships fight. It would give phase ships a reason to actually have weapons, to actually have point defense. You know, so that could work. There could be somewhat specialized weapons that can hit things in P space. So, like missiles, for example, that unless you're shooting them off of a phase ship, seem to move just incredibly fast because they're moving at like twice speed or 3 times speed. But in P space, they're just moving at normal speed. Something to give enemy ships an ability to counter phase ships. And I mean, obviously they wouldn't be amazing. They would be kind of mediocre because they're countering something. But now we start getting into the realm of, oh, well, this is countering that and that. And now we're getting into the realm of rock, paper, scissors, though, right? So maybe it could be like a phase fighter or phase interceptors. Allow phase ship point defense to function in P space. So these little fighters that you're creating now are zipping around attacking the phase ships. And that you can have them prioritize enemy phase ships. And we can make it so that if they... Actually, a fantastic thing, just thinking about it. What if there was a hull mod that allowed fighters, let's say of a specific class, say interceptors, not bombers, because that would just potentially be really bad, but some like interceptors and fighters, also that allowed hangar units, non-bomber hangar units, that works, I think, to phase. And this whole mod would allow them to interface space, which they can stay in forever. And when they're in that, if the carrier is targeting if the carrier targets a phase ship, then the fighters can phase and attack the phase ship in P space. Allow phase ships to fire their weapons, point defense only weapons, on auto fire at these interceptors, and something like that. I don't know if that's viable or not. I don't know if they would be able to do that, but that's one thing. And that could fix some problems, but I'm not sure, right? This is one of those things where it comes into play of, would this just introduce a new skill ceiling? And then also in the code, they'd have to differentiate non-bomber fighters and bombers in the combat screen instead of just like on the ordnance screen. So that could create problems, because if you think about it, if you really were micromanaging these things, you could have, say, your carriers target this enemy phase ship, way on this side of the screen, and then here's your actual target, like right here. And once your fighters get to like back here, then you have them target that one, and then they all come out of phase space and dump their load on that enemy, which would be somewhat counterintuitive. Well, not counterintuitive, it would be potentially too much, I think. It would be not necessarily what you would want. So, I don't know. You have to figure it out. It's how do we roll back this terrible change the phase shifts that makes them trash and fix them while letting them still be powerful, because they're supposed to be these terrifying, powerful ships, but then be able to actually deal with them. So that becomes the question. In most games like this, whenever you have submarines and there's no easy way to attack the submarines when they're in, under the water in P space, you have this problem almost all the time because it's effectively invincibility. Invincibility and a speed improvement, which you can toggle on and off whenever you want. So they've sort of worked on the invincibility, the P space, but I think they've potentially overdone it. If you read the forums, they've not potentially overdone it, they've overdone it for sure. So I don't know. They'll figure something out. They'll figure something out. And hopefully it's something that makes people actually want to use spaceships again. Because sure, there's that one person. It's like, oh man, these are the best ships ever. We did it this way. Well, there's also that one person who like used a hound and like, I don't know, killed a... There's also that one person who uses a hound and like, I don't know, kills a paragon or something. A single hound. You know, something like that. So, do those people matter? Not really. If you balance your game around those people, you're just screwing yourself over. It's like, okay, let's all use our one hound in our one fleet. Just imagine they had that one hound that comes out and they just have a fleet of 30 hounds. When that hound has the retreat, they pull out another one, and they only fly that one hound. Oh man, this idea sounds dumber and dumber as I go with it. But yeah, you usually don't balance your game around like the high end, because if you do, you start to have problems. So, but I don't know. We'd have to find something, right? So what you probably want to avoid is the rock paper scissors idea. Because once you start going in that direction, that's what your entire game becomes. And we don't want it to be rock, paper, scissors. If you look at the Harbinger, one of its roles is being a phase ship hunter, because its special can knock them out of phase ship, can knock them out of phase space. You probably have 3 phase lances on it, so you just one-shot the phase frigate. So, is what it is. But I think it might be more effective to have like some sort of, and plus, I mean, the other thing is if you have highly specialized weapons, now you have problems, right? If it's, I have this highly specialized weapon that only, you know, that is death against phase ships, but not against everything else, well, now you have problems. So maybe they can introduce something that allows missiles to target phase ships, because a lot of AI uses missiles. Maybe, and hear me out, all missiles can target phase ships, because then that gives another use to missiles. That makes some ships potentially overtuned, so maybe only specific types of missiles. And then, like, those missiles that are highly maneuverable can go into phase space and attack enemy phase ships. Gives them a reason to have point defense, whereas usually if you want point defense as a phase space, as a phase ship, you just play a shade, and then you have point defense. You don't have to worry about it. But yeah, I don't know. Because if you think about it, Starsector in a way has a similar conundrum to PlanetSide 2? PlanetSide 2 might have 3 conundrums at this point, maybe 4. The conundrums are, in Starsector, it would be it would be ship combat. So you have a couple layers. Right now, what you have predominantly is ship combat and fighter combat. And so the fighters, if they're able to win and basically disable the enemy and basically win the air battle, if you will, they have air superiority, you end up with a problem where now the enemy ships are having to contend with these fighters. And those fighters are going to slowly pick away at them. But also, if they won the air game, effectively, quote unquote, then now the enemy ships, if any of them are carriers and use bombers, those bombers are useless. They're just going to get shot down the moment they come out. So you have to win the air game. There's the ship game. And this would add another layer of the P-Space game, where you want to use phase ships. So it would be the air superiority warship superiority and then phase ship superiority is how it would go. So that could be interesting, but it would really just rely on how exactly they decide to do it. Because, and here's one of the main issues. If people are using AMD cards, when you get a lot of stuff on screen, it starts to lag. So knowing that many of their customers will use AMD cards, developers will have a vested interest in not having carriers be the meta. So they don't want you to have, I don't know, like 20 pirate carriers, those Colossus MK3s, and just swarm out, hundreds and hundreds of fighters. Because if you do, well, the game's going to lag. If you're on NVIDIA, I think it runs fine, but if you're on AMD, you're going to start getting frames, and if you're recording, God help you. So they don't necessarily want that, which means they need fewer carriers, which they've sort of encouraged. Many of the abilities that improve carriers max out at like 8 carrier base, 8 hangar base, so that works. But I still have to ask, like where do they want to go with that, right? So how do they intend? I'm really curious how they're going to answer the people talking about phase ships, because if people, I keep going back to it because I liked using phase ships. Like I really liked using phase ships. I liked them so much I stopped using them because they were really powerful. They just required a lot of maintenance. And it was like, well, these ships are really good, and I liked using them in Big Ship Energy, which I think is still going. Then the other 2 or 3 playthroughs that come after that, we tried to not use them as much, and things seemed to go pretty well. But we still use them occasionally. But I don't know. I think they went the wrong direction with that. I think the skills being changed, I think that's a good change. I think they need to make it so that markets have more of a variety of items, of weapons to buy. Because you guys saw, like, I was looking for, I think it was medium breacher missiles, and I went to like 10, 20 different colonies and I didn't have any. Are you kidding me? Like, how rare are these things? And there's little things when you're playing a game that really shouldn't exist. You shouldn't be sitting there. You shouldn't sit there with frustrations when you're playing a game. You shouldn't have to like sit there and basically you want to take things that are going to encourage the player to stop playing, and you want to remove those things where it's like, okay, well, how can I just circumvent this? Because if you put a barrier in somewhere, if you put something that just is annoying the player, they're either going to install a mod that circumvents it, or they're going to install a mod that lessens it, or they're just not going to play your game, or they'll find a way around it. So one of the ways you get around the market being extremely fickle and not giving you what you're after is in Starsector, you just go out and you just explore until you find literally all the blueprints you would want, or you raid until you find all the blueprints you want. Raiding in this version of the game is broken because you can get blueprints that you already have, so that's terrible. Okay, so you can get random blueprints that you already have. Fantastic. So instead of it being you raid and you get a blueprint that you want, a new blueprint, maybe it's something that you want, maybe it's not, it's okay, it's new. Now you get a blueprint and, well, maybe you got something that can help you, maybe you didn't. I'm sure it makes logical sense, like, why would you get a new blueprint every time? But in terms of gameplay, well, there's lots of contrivances in gameplay. Lots of contrivances in games. Why is it in a first-person shooter when you're reloading, your gun just never jams? Why is it that when you get shot, you don't like? Why is it when you get shot in the leg, there's not a chance for you to just die because it hit an artery, or hit the bone and the bone shattered and it lacerated the artery and the vein, and real world problems. Like, why is that not there? Oh, a contrivance, cool. So there are contrivances that make the game fun, that improve the quality of the game for the player. And then there are contrivances that just make it suck. So, I don't know, if it turns out that that's just a bug, and I was not supposed to be getting blueprints I already have, then that's fine. If it turns out that that's how they're going to do it now, fuck that. I would look for a mod or something that just removes that from the pool, so I don't have to put up with that. It's like why bother? Why bother raiding at that point? There's a risk to it. So unless you're just playing a pirate who raids for everything, then there's now a risk that you have to deal with. But you might just get crap you don't need in a game where you can otherwise go and basically say, I want this. I want supplies. I want ship weapons. I want this. In a game where you can do that, now you're getting crap you don't need? Why? Like, I don't get it. So, there's a lot of things they need to change. A lot of things they need to update. A lot of little things that cause frustrations to the player, and in the beginning, the player is not going to care about those frustrations. Give them enough time, though. Like, I probably have hundreds, like easily hundreds, probably close to 300 or 400 hours total playing Starsector these days. At a certain point, like, all these frustrations are just, why is this in the game? Why hasn't this been fixed yet? Why is this still the way it is? Why can't I back out of this? Why can't I back out of that? I can click raid and I can still back out. Why can't I, if I accidentally click attack the station, why can't I back up? I don't know, you tell me. You tell me. Why can't I find items that I'm looking for? Why isn't there, like, they have the ability to track the cost of everything, but I can't, like, do a search to find out where this specific item is in the sector and on the markets. I can't buy it remotely right now. Like, aren't credits just logical things, like digital things, like a normal credit card? Can't I buy it over there and it go into storage and then I go over there and get it? Like, what's going on here? So, I don't know. There's lots of little things that are kind of frustrating. This is not Mountain Blade. I do not need to go to a town to find out what their inventory is. So, I don't know. This is what it is. But on the bright side, a lot of stuff still works. Tempests are still nice. You could probably do pretty well with just like 20 Tempests. It'd probably still do the trick. If you start... The big thing that annoys me is I think a lot of their ships need intense balancing. Like, intense balancing issues. Because, like, sure, ships do their role, but, like, it's fine to have lots of ships and everything. They added some ships this patch, which is fine. But, like, I just have to ask myself, like, why would I ever use a Mora, for example? Okay, it's really slow, it's really big. It can take a ton of punishment, well, that's nice. But it's also a big it's also a big space whale that goes at like 45. So some capital class can outrun it. Like, why would you use it? Unless your goal is just to create a line at the bottom of the screen and just move that line up until you crush everything against one side of the screen and kill it. Like, but that's not how Starsector works, typically. So I always have to ask myself, you know, like, why would I use ship X over ship Y? And I think the frigate meta is still as strong as always. So I don't know. It's one of those things where you have some dissonance between what the game's lore implications are, I guess, and what the gameplay actually is. So I don't know. I'd like to continue playing Starsector in a way, but at the same time, we've gotten to the point where the real fun part of Starsector is in the beginning, and I think we're already past the mid game portion. We're ready to go into the late game, and honestly, the late game portion of Starsector sucks right now. It's everything takes forever. Everything. Like, you want to go fight an enemy. Okay, cool. Here's what you need to do. You can't use the orders menu yet, so you can't get a bunch of fleets to follow you unless you're using an Axarellan. And there's just a lot of things that need to be added. It's not Gold Edition yet, so, you know, here's hoping. But I don't know. I don't know. Lots of things I'd like to see added. So things that they primarily need to fix. So give us a clear-cut reason why we would always want a carrier in our fleet. Why do I 100% always want a carrier in my fleet? Why is air superiority, fighters, hangar units, why is hangar unit superiority, I guess? I'm just going to call it air superiority. You'll figure it out. So we have air, ships, and phase. So why would air superiority be important to me? I need that question answered. If the answer is, well, it doesn't have to be, then that's the wrong answer. Why is it in the game? Why is warship superiority important to me? Why is phase space superiority important to me? And if you can answer these, you can start having a pretty interesting I think you could resolve a lot of problems. Well, if you don't have phase space superiority, they go and they destroy your carriers. Well, if you don't have air superiority, they destroy your warships. If you don't have warships, they destroy. Well, right. This is where we sort of run into something that's interesting. Like, carriers are the counter to phase space, to phase ships. They were in the previous version. They still are today. Phase ships are a little bit more vulnerable to frigates now, but it was originally supposed to be fighters. I don't know if it's reached there in big ship energy yet, but one of the ways I get past that elite phase fleet is I just load up a ton of condors with wasps. I think it's wasps or talons, one of the two. And then we just swarm them with talons or wasps or whatever the hangar unit was. And they just cannot compete. They don't have the point defense to take care of those. They want to run away from the enemy ships instead of destroying the carriers. And so they just, little by little, die. And that's the hard counter to phase ships. The other hard counter is you just ignore them. You just keep them at bay, don't let them do anything, and eventually they'll run out of CR and die. And that is by far the most boring mechanic in your game. If enemy ships, if one of the ways you can defeat an enemy ship is just by waiting them out, what's wrong with you? Like, why is that even in the game? I'm not saying remove it, because I'm not saying remove it to make phase ships stronger. I'm saying add something else. Like, do something. I mean, obviously, you would only do this strategy in the beginning of the game, right? You'd only use this strategy when you don't know how to deal with phase ships. But why bother? I don't even know what to say there. It's one of those strategies that you hear about, like, early on, when I think I heard about it like in like the previous version And it was just like, well, that's stupid. But I don't know. They'll find something. They'll figure something out. But this is definitely a flop on that. I think they need to tweak that balance between the different layers of combat: phase space, warships, and carriers. I think they need to more clearly define like what each rule is. Like it is simplifying things to an extent, but it's saying this is interceptor, this is fighter, this is bomber. We don't need to know it's a heavy fighter or a heavy interceptor. I couldn't care less. I don't care what a support interceptor or fighter is. I don't care about what the Zyphos is. What I care about is we need these things, and this is what they specifically do. And the thing that's kind of going to infuriate people who've been with Starsector for much longer is those things were likely very highly delineated in previous versions of the game. Because people have already said the Piranha is useless now, because in previous versions of the game, you would have mass Piranhas go to one side of the screen, and then you would have them drop all their bombs in one area to create a bomb screen, and then you'd make a play over here that's protected by the bomb screen, and then you go do something else. So there was more depth at one point, and now that depth has been removed, probably to make the game easier for people to play. But they didn't actually do anything to make that viable. Can you imagine if Piranhas drop bombs like what is it, like Kopeshas drop their rockets, and it's like boom, 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 and then they fly away? Just this little lump of bombs coming their direction. This little lump of bombs. Can you imagine? They'd be terrifying. They probably tested that, and then it didn't work because the bombs probably blew each other up. But I don't know. I'd like to see something that sort of works. You don't, as I've said, you don't want the rock paper scissors thing. Like, you don't want warships beat carriers, carriers beat phase ships, phase ships beat warships. You do that, that's stupid. Don't do that. So instead, we'd want like each one to have the ability to do something, be able to counter the other one. So yeah, the idea of like fighters that can phase and attack phase ships directly, phase ships being able to attack each other in phase space or something like that, or they don't even need to necessarily be able to do that. You just want to force them out of phase space. And specialized weapons, I suppose, maybe specialized weapons that can allow warships to fire into P space, potentially. Like, maybe that could be a thing. But I don't know. Like, that might be adding too much complexity. But anyway, I don't know. And plus, it would just be a toss-up. Like, can you imagine? So, like, one fleet, your fleet is, one enemy fleet your fleet is fantastic against, and then the other fleet, because they have specific hull mods, your fleet gets wrecked. Like, that probably wouldn't be fun. Or if it's a faction thing, like your fleet is amazing against the hegemony, but then you go up against Tritachyon, you just get annihilated. So, I don't know. Whatever they do, though, if they have a weapon that's... If they go... I'm trying to think about it. Like, how could they do phase space without it sucking? They could do what the Tower do, moving through the warp, where they just sort of like, whoop, and then they back out. Where, like, hitting... like, phasing in the P space is just a temporary thing. Very temporary, not limited by flux. It just costs you a certain amount of flux. And then the ship phases into P space for, like, half a second or something and then comes back out, and then you have the cooldown, which is very short, and then can go back in and go back in and go back in. That could be a thing that could work. I don't know, they might have already tried that in other versions, I don't know. But again, that's not like a submarine, that's more like you just dip into the water. They could, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. They could make being in phase space far more costly without slowing you down, but make it so that there's a delay on when being in P space starts to cost you flux. Like maybe for like half a second, there's no cost to entering phase space. So it's like a dodge, basically, at that point. That could be interesting. And then if you're in there for more than half a second, let's say the cost of being in P space is doubled compared to what it is right now. So you have an interest in using P space as just a dodge to quickly move around. It still has a delay when you come out or something like that. And that could be interesting. That's kind of embracing that brawler mindset they were talking about. But I think you can do that in right now's version. But anyway, I don't know. They'll figure it out. I still think the idea of a phase fighter is kind of interesting, or like phase missiles or something like that. Could be interesting. Phase missiles that can't unphase. Specifically, you fire them if it's targeting a missiles that can phase but cannot unphase, I guess is the better way of saying that. So when you fire them, or just give all missiles the ability to do that, so that that weapon slot is way more dangerous to P ships, as opposed to like ballistics or lasers or something. Have like some lasers that can hit phase ships. I would say a phased lance, but that wouldn't be a good idea, I don't think. But anyway, this concludes my coverage of Starsector version 0.95.1a-RC6. When the next version of Starsector comes out, I'll probably check it out again and see what I can do with it. The interest in this series seems to be waning, so I think it's about time that we started moving on to other projects. As I've said, if you want to see more of this, then go ahead and let me know, and we'll see what we can do about that. We'll come back to it, start making daily episodes again. Maybe we might go weekly. We'll see. Until then, guys, my name has been Fen Plays. This has been Starsector version 0.95.1a, and I'll catch you guys later. Go ahead, leave me a like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and just share the video with whoever you think would like it. See you later.